Newt, let's move to domestic politics. And the president goes to a North Carolina company yesterday and spoke about the need, rather really a demand, that Congress pass this jobs plan. And he cited this company as an example of what we need to encourage in the United States. And one little problem, the company has a huge operation in place in San Jose, Costa Rica, where 1,000-plus people are employed, and apparently might have plans to put more jobs overseas.
Well, look, the president is beginning to be a parody of himself. First of all, he repudiates the Constitution. He goes around as though he were a king making demands. I think he has not yet come to grips with the fact that John Boehner is Speaker and the Republicans control the House. And this is one of the places where I give Bill Clinton a lot of credit. When we won in '94, Clinton spent about 6 months coming, and I think it was very painful, because they had not lost control of the House in 40 years. And he finally came to grips with the fact that we were a fact. The American people had chosen us, and if he was going to get anything done, he was going to negotiate with us. He wasn't going to surrender to us, but he was going to seriously negotiate with us. I think Obama's gone in the opposite direction. I think he's decided that he's going to spend the next year and a half living a fantasy life of running around making petulant demands as though he were 5 years old, and the country should somehow feel sorry for him because the Congress is just going to start ignoring him. I mean, he's going to become less and less relevant to the process of governing America.
Do you think there could be any possibility that Barack Obama would get a visit from somebody in the party who says, "Look, Mr. President, this just isn't working, and you either have to change course or we have to nominate somebody else"? I mean, is there any chance of that happening at all?
Oh, I think there is beginning to be, yes. I think the problems we're getting into in the Middle East, the problems we are in economically here at home, the degree to which he so obviously is disoriented and doesn't have any kind of realistic strategy to get anything done. If we end up with 2 or 3 more economic shocks, for example, if Greece goes bankrupt and the euro starts decaying, or if the Middle East begins to get much more difficult and you start having real problems with the price of oil, I think it would not take much for some very senior Democrats to say, we're prepared to mount a campaign and field a candidate against you, unless you either change very dramatically or. But here's his problem: the most intense energy in his party is on the left. And so, the Maxine Waters of the world want him to become more radical,
more liberal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very hard for him to try to move to a practical, realistic approach as Clinton did, because he's faced with this enormous pressure from his left. And those are the people that he's now most disappointing, because he's turning out not only not to be effective, but not to be capable of advocating and articulating their values.
So the James Webb, Mary Landrieu types, maybe John Tester types, Bob Casey and Pennsylvania types, they're not the ones who are going to have the power in this instance.
Well, they might have. I mean, if one of them decides to run against him, they may have the power just because they start beating him. When Gene McCarthy started running against Lyndon Johnson, it was unthinkable that Johnson could be driven out of the race. But the very existence of a serious opponent began to just chew up his presidency. And if somebody has the courage to get up and say, Barack Obama's a nice guy, but he can't do the job, and I'm going to represent the Democratic Party, that person might be shocked at how rapidly they start developing momentum just based on pure competence. So you now have a president who's so ineffective that it's a little frightening.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this 3 years ago that, look, he was in law school about the same time I was. I knew a lot of people who knew him when I clerked on the Supreme Court, and my view is that what was going to unravel Obama was not so much how radical he was, but how incompetent he was. And I think that's been borne out by the facts. I just think he might be the nicest guy ever, but he's just in the wrong job. I mean, I just think maybe he's good at something else, but he's not good at this.
Yeah, and part of it is that he's totally unrealistic about how the system works. Under our Constitution, and in a way, getting elected at a point where we had Nancy Pelosi as Speaker and where they had a huge majority in the Senate taught him all the wrong lessons, because he could very briefly act as though he could run the legislative branch, which is very, very unusual. I mean, Lyndon Johnson was able to do it for a year and a half. FDR did it in the 30s for a while. But as a general rule, presidents proposed but Congress disposes, and now he's back to a much more normal congressional environment, and he seems to have no skills for dealing with it. And this is, to get things done, you've got to find a way to get 218 House members and 60 senators to say that it's worth doing and that they'll agree to do it. I've been urging the House Republicans, for example, to pass the Webb-Warner bill, which is a bill by 2 Democrats from Virginia that would allow drilling offshore for oil and gas and apply the money partly to Virginia, partly to the federal government. And my theory of it is, if they pass, the House Republicans will pass it, that Reid won't be able to stop it because he now has 2 Democrats who are for it from Virginia. Tim Kaine, the former Democratic National Chairman, is for it, running for the U.S. Senate. Yeah. And they can get enough votes to pass it. Now, does Obama then sign it, or does he veto it, which would mean he's vetoing American energy, American jobs?
No, he's in a box. Yeah, no, he's in a total box. On Monday night during the debate, Newt, I was watching in Chicago with some friends, some Democrat friends, I might add, and I think it was pretty clear that all of us thought you were the smartest person on the stage. I mean, I don't think there's a doubt that if I could see anyone debate Barack Obama in a presidential debate, you would be the one I would want to debate him, because I would just be howling laughing because you'd box him into every corner on every issue. And nevertheless, you are where you are in the polls. That could change, but you are where you are in the polls now, which is not in the top 3. You got a standing ovation.
As of yesterday, I'm in the top 3.
And what poll's that?
Well, we have a poll in Florida where I'm running 3rd. We have a public policy poll that came out yesterday where I'm tied for 3rd. I'm actually very happy with the effect of the last couple debates, as people begin to look and go, maybe Gingrich is the right guy to do this.
Well, I would be cheering it all the way. But I do want to talk, however, about what's happening with this Perry-Romney matchup in the 1 and 2 position, and just put on your strategist hat for us, because you're one of the smartest strategists out there. Given Perry's performance, which seemed to flag at the end of the debate, and also still given Mitt Romney's, history, some people still saying he's a flip-flopper, he goes back and forth on issues, how do you really know who he is? With whom are you more comfortable right now when you're on that stage? Who do you think is closest to where you are on the issues?
No, look, I like all of them. Rick's a nice guy. Mitt Romney's a nice guy. I mean, I'm frankly happy with every single person on the stage.
Diplomatic.
And I just think, this is not going to fit where you want to go, but I believe we are so far from a decision about who our nominee is.
That's true.
That the numbers don't matter very much right now. I mean, I point out to people at this stage in 1971, McGovern didn't exist as a candidate. At this stage in 1975, Carter didn't exist as a candidate. They were running, but their numbers were so low they were invisible. Clinton was invisible in 1991 at this stage, and McCain was not in the top 2 in 2007. I mean, Perry, I think, has terrific strengths, but has to prove himself. Romney now has to stand up, as he did the other night, and he's got to figure out an explanation of why Perry's not the right nominee, because Perry has certain advantages. My job, I think, is totally different. I'm going to keep talking directly to the American people. I'm going to keep talking about solutions. I'm going to keep drawing a contrast with Obama. And I'm frankly not going to get involved in party infighting. I don't think that's my job. And I think in the end, that's not what the American people want.
No, it's smart.
In the next president.
It's smart. You can't blame a girl for asking, though. Newt, we appreciate it. 800-876-4123. Newt Gingrich on the Laura Ingraham Show. A Nation Like No Other. That's a great title, and of course he's written more books than anyone can count. And Newt, we wish you the best of luck in the next debate. Keep getting the standing O's.
Well, anybody who wants to can go to newt.org and see what we're doing.